Martin, good afternoon. Thanks for coming on, having a chat. Before we get stuck into output, can you give us a little bit of your background first, leading up to output?
Yeah, absolutely, Oliver. So, basically, growing up, I was basically always sports mad and playing every sport you can imagine. But at the same time, I always had a huge passion for maths and science and engineering. So ultimately, finishing school, I went into a course called Sports and Exercise Engineering. And then while I was doing that, I got exposure to wearable sensors. And that was like back in 2012 when all the wearables were like Fitbits and they're all for cardiovascular exercise and step counting, but there wasn't really anything for the gym. And that got me thinking, well, how can I use these types of sensors but apply them to strength conditioning and physiotherapy? And ultimately that led to me doing my PhD, and through collaborations in UCD then we ultimately as a team arrived at producing output as a company and as a technology. So it's really just a journey of like pursuing my passions in both the sports side and then also the kind of maths and problem solving side as well.
Yeah, and so we touched on output. I mentioned the name, but so when did that idea come about for you? I know you said it was your passion. You wanted to combine your passions, but output, capture, this type of thing. What was your inspiration, and when did it come?
Yeah, so for me, like initially getting into the area was definitely in my final year of college. So I was working for a wearable sensors company, and I was building kind of like medical and demo applications, not in the sporting context. But in the evening, I was doing a lot of gym training for my own sports preparation, and I wanted to combine like the two things I was doing. So that got me broadly interested in the area of developing wearable sensor solutions for strength conditioning. But where the idea really came from then was when I moved to University College Dublin and collaborated with my co-founders, Professor Brian Caulfield and Dara Whelan, who were much more familiar on the practitioner side of sport, and they really helped guide the need of the end user plus the technical expertise that we had into kind of the holistic system that output captures. So for me, it was early days, but then definitely Capture and Hub came from more of a collaborative setup with the team in UCD and beyond.
Yeah, and so then in a nutshell, I mean, I've been looking into it a little bit, and I've seen the term Swiss Army knife, that type of thing. So, but sort of the output system, what is it and how does it work?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the first thing to point out relative to other sports technologies, it does a lot of things, but it's actually just this little matchbox size sensor unit. So
yeah,
the user basically puts on the sensor and then completes the task, and that will explain either a variety or an individual component of their fitness. So the components of fitness that we track include balance, strength endurance, power, reactive strength. We have modules on the way for speed and agility as well. And then we also look at things like wellness as well. But ultimately, we're putting all of this off-field testing and tracking for strength conditioning and physiotherapy into one quick and simple, easy to use system for athlete testing and tracking. But importantly as well, we focus a lot on accuracy and validity and reliability, which is hugely important as well for these technologies. So it's accurate, it's reliable, just like all those lab grade technologies, but it's a lot more portable and functional as well.
Yeah, I can see the sun's just come out there
yeah,
through the window.
1 second. Sorry.
Better. Otherwise, you would have had your shades on.
That's it. Absolutely.
So you've all. So I suppose you and the guys you mentioned, you set it up with you. It's your background, but even so, how hard is it to make an idea into reality?
Yeah, I mean, it takes so much work. I mean, for me, it's been about an 8-year journey at this point, and for my collaborators, 6 years as well. And it's so much things between the engineering, the sensors, the algorithms, the software, the interface, and then also like really understanding the market and the end user base and delivering a solution with your expertise that really meets their needs. So it's just hugely important to be focusing on the market, listening to end users, but then also doing something innovative and unique in terms of the solutions you're creating. And that process is kind of never ending because you can always listen more and you can always improve more. So for us, it's constant development and constant work. So far, 8 years, and I'm sure many more ahead of us as well.
Yeah, and so output, it's used for all the things that you've mentioned. Is it aimed at professional sports? Is that the aim, or is it sort of, is it tangible? Is it accessible for amateur clubs, schools, other capacities as well?
Yeah, no, so it is completely applicable in professional sport, and indeed we have a number of co-development partners and customers in that space. But for us, having worked in kind of lecturing and teaching in sports science, one of our big motivations is to bring the type of data that you get at that laboratory or top level in university and research to a much wider audience than ever previously possible. So Output is currently deployed with, yes, pro sports teams, but also importantly, not just the top level of the team, but the sub academies and people developing the younger athletes. So we work now with schools, we work with clinics, gyms, and we work with universities as well. And for us, that's really exciting because we think the value of the data that the system produces is far more valuable for athletes on their long-term journey than just those already at the top. And it's great to be able to add that objectivity and that diversity of measurement to environments where it's never previously really been available before. So for us, we kind of focus on all of that and don't prioritize professional over school or vice versa.
And so if I'm working for or at a club or a school, and I want to take that next step, want to analyze more, want to bring the output system in, what packages are available to me, and how flexible are those packages? Can you go between different ones?
Yeah, absolutely. So the way we always think about it is you can go from a single unit right up to a unit per athlete. And the system definitely works its best in terms of efficiency and really bringing testing and tracking into the athlete's own hands when you have more sensors. But it can also work with a lower number of units. So what we typically do is set up demo calls with potential end users, walk them through the system's capabilities, including the cloud functionalities, the athlete profiles, what a single unit can do per athlete, and then kind of talk through their setup and their environment and work out what's the perfect blend between number of sensors and the number of athlete profiles that you need. And just as two examples, our gold package is 15 units and can do about 100 athletes, and our platinum is 30 and has up to 300 athletes. And we have customers that would be right across those packages depending on the environment and really dependent on their practitioners and their resources as well.
So in terms of resources, that just when you have the packages, you have the sensor, but what's that? You mentioned the cloud, and what is it that it's linked up to? Is it a smartphone or a computer?
Yeah, so each unit pairs to a host device, which acts kind of as the testing and the feedback device. So you can imagine if you're lifting weights, as you're finishing a rep, you're getting feedback on the screen of your velocities and your powers, and gives you real-time feedback to kind of tune and maximize the value of your training or testing session. So for each unit, then you also have a host device, which is either a tablet or a smartphone. They're all synchronized on, say, the club's or the school's accounts, and the data synchronizes to the output hub. So the data on the mobile phone, as soon as you land the jump or finish the flexibility task and so on, it can populate on leaderboards in the central TV screen or desktop platform. And that's really, really valuable in terms of driving a bit of competition and culture in a sports environment as well. So it's just the units, the phone with the app, and then that all connects via the internet to the hub, which is kind of like a website platform.
And so does it matter if the coach isn't in the gym with them or isn't on the same site at the time?
No, as you can imagine, like we always want it to be athlete-driven testing because that can greatly increase the efficiency of how many athletes you can test at once and where you can do that. But what really drove the importance of making the system simple to do the testing was COVID, because throughout earlier this year and even now as well, a number of our end users were trying to do state-of-the-art sports science, but without actually being on site with their athletes. So that's really pushed us to make the system as simple and easy to use as possible. So unlike some of the other kits out there that require an expert to be running them, once you've used Output once or twice, the flow of the app is very simple. It can be run by an athlete in school or a pro athlete, but the data then is still fed into the hub where the coach can then gather it and analyze it. They can, on a quick snapshot, look at which players are deviating below their normal values in key tests and measures, and then they can dig in much deeper into the trends and the combination of all the metrics that the system captures as well. So no, we definitely think that the app, as much as it's providing valuable data to the coaches, we've tried to make it very athlete centric because they're often left out of the puzzle of developing sports technology. But then the hub is really then the place for the coaches to live and get the benefit of all that data to help them make decisions on the athlete's journeys.
So you mentioned COVID, and I imagine because it's obviously due to COVID, its use it's much more useful. But what I mean is another thing that's come up a lot recently, but since COVID even more so, is well-being and wellness of athletes, of kids in schools. But so what sorts of capabilities in terms of wellness does the platform have?
Yeah, so for us, like we obviously have spent a lot of time researching in the quantitative space and these sensor-based measurements, but obviously for an athlete, it's very much not only the quantitative side that's important, but also the qualitative and how they're feeling. So our system allows not only you to capture all these quantitative measurements, but for the athlete to report on their sleep quality and their mental well-being on a given day, their physical well-being on a given day. And they also produce a metric which represents how ready they feel to do a sporting activity. And those four things are combined with the objective metrics to give this kind of mixed methods approach to understand an athlete's status. So you can imagine if an athlete marks themselves as being quite physically sore and having poor sleep quality, and then that's backed up in some of their power measurements and that type of thing, it might indicate that they need more recovery or a better nutrition for that period of time. Whereas on the flip side, maybe their measurables are really good and they're reporting, not great readiness, and you can kind of have a conversation with them, and that's why that is. Like when they look physically strong, what's going on there, and really you can help personalize the understanding of what's going on with an athlete on a given day. And when you have tens and hundreds of athletes coming through your doors every day, it's nice to just have a quick, simple system that can very quickly flag to you who's down on the quantitative and who's down on the qualitative, and who's down on both as well, or up indeed, because it's just a great way to spot that, go over, have a conversation, and see what needs to be done to adapt and make sure that the athlete can recover or reach their best given their current status.
And so where's the system as of now, as of today? So a couple of examples in professional sports, education, however you want, where it's being used.
Yeah, absolutely. So as kind of mentioned, we have it deployed right from the pro level down to gyms and physio clinics. And just as some examples in terms of pro sport, we work with Leinster Rugby, one of the large provincial teams here in Ireland. And interestingly, like we actually work predominantly with their sub academy and helping them apply the levels that they have at the top level in the development side of the club to give that top level data to a wider audience than previously possible. We also work across the UK and Ireland with pro sports teams in soccer and basketball and other key sports as well. In terms of universities in the UK and Ireland, some examples would be Sheffield Hallam University, whose strength and conditioning program work with us. We also work with NUI Galway High Performance, Letterkenny Institute of Technology, and so on. And we really, really love working at the education level, but not just at the university level. In terms of schools, we're just currently onboarding with Dulwich College, which is very exciting. And also we work with St. Michael's College as an example here in Dublin, another great sports school as well. So in those kind of setups, we work both from the education side in terms of helping people understand the importance of these measures and how they can be applied in physiotherapy and strength conditioning, but also then to aid the athlete development journey in terms of how they can become robust and physically capable for the demands of their sport as they get older and closer to the next level, be that college or professional or even just playing in older age groups as they go. And then beyond that as well, onboarded with many physio clinics and gyms across the UK and Ireland who usually go for our bronze or silver package and use it for their client testing and tracking and feedback as well.
Right. And so if we mentioned coronavirus, it's hard not to, it seems at the minute. If we move away slightly from output of the system, you as a business owner or as someone who's part of the starting up of the business, what challenges have you faced because of the virus?
Yeah, so the timing for us was very strange. So we launched our product in February and we actually closed our seed investment round then as well. And to do that, we devised like an 18 to 20 month plan based on what was previously the world that existed in sport. So for us, it was really a case of almost putting that aside and thinking about how can we build a plan to be relevant, useful, and viable for people in the sporting context throughout the coronavirus period. And I guess like we've continuously evaluated that and iterated it because there's so much inertia and unknown in terms of coronavirus and its impact on sports. So what we try to do is, make sure the tech is valuable and viable during these times, but also to try to make sure that we are helping the right people. So, for instance, the education markets become very important for us because there's a real focus on athlete welfare and long-term development because of the stresses of the coronavirus and so on. And then also we've obviously made sure that we can enable remote coaching and remote testing and tracking to the best possible level as well. So it's a combination of completely redesigning our business plan, which is a huge challenge, and then also making sure that we focus our tech priorities to match the needs of the market. And that's a constantly iterative thing because things are changing every week and every day, and totally different in one part of the world to the other at the moment as well.
Yeah, and so obviously you guys are involved in it's the global sports wearables, sports analytics market. How exciting is that for you as a company and for you personally as a market to be involved in?
Yeah, no, it's really, really very exciting. So, I mean, we've obviously been researching in this space for about 8 years, and we've made huge progress in our tech development. And simultaneous to that, commercially, we've seen the sports analytics and wearables markets just grow and grow, from really simplistic devices that could just offer a couple of basic insights about general activity levels, through to things like our technology now that can offer you deep insight about your physical capabilities, your everyday status, and much more diverse measurements as well. So for us to be kind of doing something that's innovative and unique in this space at a time where it's also really, really growing in popularity and people are realizing the value of this type of data, both from the wearables and the analytics point of view. It's really exciting, and we're delighted to be building a team to tackle some of the biggest problems in the space as well. So yeah, it's always looking forward to what's ahead of us.
And for you personally, as a young entrepreneur, I was obviously doing a little bit of research before we having a chat, and you generally recognised as one of the best young entrepreneurs coming out of Ireland at the minute. But what advice would you give? You say for you it's been an 8-year process and output and that type of thing. But if somebody's got an idea and they think it's a good one and they want to roll with it, what advice would you give someone starting out?
Yeah, like I think when you reflect on the journey so far, and by all means, we're probably even with the 8 years still only at the beginning of the journey. Many of the learnings are similar to what you get in sports. So like, sounds quite cliched, but the most important thing is build a great team around you, and then have a clear set of goals for you all to go after and achieve together. And then just like sport, always make sure that you're constantly improving as well. So you're not staying static and just saying that's it, we have the solution. That you're constantly improving, constantly listening, developing further and further as a team and as a technology. So I think that's probably the main one, is just the people, and then the ambition and the want to always do better are probably the main things that define what we've done so far as a organization to get where we are.
And from what you've done so far, again, personally as an organization, if there's anything you could change going back, what would it be?
Yeah, it's like very interesting question. I think the PhDs that we did were actually great in a sense, because often PhDs are very like algorithmically focused and not end user focused, but we actually made sure we had many studies working with end users and deploying the technologies. But the one thing I didn't do right back at the very start is, at the start of a PhD, you analyze all the literature in your field and you identify academically where the gaps are for new research. And what I didn't do at that time was market research and end user interviews, which I did do after my PhD. And I feel like if I had at the very done those interviews and combined them with the academic lit review, you could have found some really unique kind of intersects of needs and gaps to go after, which we have uncovered and gone after, but we could have probably done it even more efficiently had we had that kind of knowledge from both the end user and market side and then the research side earlier on in the journey. But apart from that, gladly, there's not many regrets in the journey yet, so long may that continue.
And so you mentioned that you were into your sports. What helps you switch off from your work, if it's all possible?
Yeah, so two things, and probably unsurprising, the first one is I love to exercise and play sports. So, whether that's in the gym or that's playing tag rugby with the crew from the output team, that's a huge way to just clear the head and just focus on the game and or the exercise, and that's great. And then, as you can probably see from behind me as well, massive music collector as well. So I collect vinyl records and love to listen to albums from many genres. So music and sport are probably the two big things for me, just to unwind and get going. It used to be reading as well, but now all my reading is like about learning about business and
Yeah,
focusing for
yeah.
output. So less relaxing and more work like, but yes, certainly sport and music are huge for me.
And in terms of sports, have you got a team that you support or you follow yourself? And is there any special reason for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe for my sins, but I support Newcastle United
Oh
because
wow.
my family are actually from Whitley Bay on my mum's side, so I've got lots of cousins and aunts and uncles. My grandparents were previously from Newcastle, so growing up, it was the natural choice. And haven't been to St James's obviously for a while now with coronavirus, but always love to get there for a game. And yeah, they're definitely the team I've supported for the longest.
Yeah, I've been a few times as well to St James's Park. It is great, even though the away fans end up miles up in the gods. Um,
Yeah,
so for you, in terms of an athlete, so we talk about sports, we covered quite a lot, but for an all-time favorite athlete of yours, who would it be and why?
yeah. So like right now, there's so many athletes that I look at and I'm incredibly impressed by for different reasons. But I think like going back to the Newcastle link, like and as a youngster, growing up in the '90s, Alan Shearer was the goal machine, and I think actually a really good role model as well. So he's definitely the first person that
Yeah,
I remember that's been like that's a sporting idol, and don't think anyone's lived up to that yet for me since. But this year the Michael Jordan documentary and that type of thing as well was incredible, and characters like that and Serena Williams who just continue to succeed far beyond the age that you'd expect someone to be top of their game are always fascinating athletes to look at. But just from the personal bias towards Newcastle, Shearer takes the medal from me.
and not necessarily in sport or to do with output really, but who would be the most impressive person or inspiring person that you've met?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. For me, the answer sounds a little bit cheesy, but it's just true in terms of my life and who I'm most inspired by. And it's my dad actually. So my dad is a theoretical physicist and a professor of physics.
Oh, wow.
And throughout his career, he's had some really impressive breakthroughs and inventions. And his pure commitment to developing things that are new and using math and physics to do that is very inspiring. And then his attitude of being very humble and collaborative in doing that is also a big influence on me. So that's actually the person that throughout my life definitely just been inspired tons by.
And so finally then, for output, what do you think the future holds? Are there any specific sports you'd love to get more involved with? Are there any new markets you'd love to access?
Yeah, absolutely. Like for us, we're a sport agnostic tool. So for us, like one great indicator of success would be the more sports we work with. And like I myself over the years have actually like competed and played in like 15 sports. So I think we're currently approaching that with output, and I definitely would like to smash 15 sports at the park and get up to 30, 40 different sports. Currently, we are focusing a lot on the US, which is great. So baseball and American football are of importance, but I think over the years, like we really see strength conditioning and physiotherapy being very, very important across any sport, and indeed like athletics and combat sports as well. So for us, like it would be really nice in the years to come to kind of just have a great portfolio of users across all sorts of sports. Because I think strength conditioning and physio can be key across the board.
Definitely. Well, listen, thanks for taking a bit of time to explain all that to us, Martin, and catch up with you again soon.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Maria Oliver.
Cheers, mate.